Hi, everyone. I'm Ophelie Jacobson with Campus Reform, and we've got another great interview lined up for you today. But before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and to give this video a like if you want to see more content like this from Campus Reform. Today, I'm joined by a fellow campus correspondent, Blair Nelson, who has recently taken the initiative to cover some protests as an independent student journalist. Today, Blair joins us today to talk about these experiences, especially one night where he was arrested along with a couple of Daily Caller reporters. Blair, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great, so let's go ahead and get started. Kind of give our audience a take about what exactly happened on the night that you got arrested.
Absolutely. So I was out covering some rioting and protests going on in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. So I was filming out there, and I was with two Daily Caller reporters, and I was also with an independent journalist named Brandon. BG on the scene is his Twitter. Some of you may know who he is. He's pretty big in the area. So we were driving around, and we decided to get out of the car because so they had this caravan just driving through the streets. They got surrounded by the police, and they started pulling them out of their cars. So we got out, started filming, and we were on the sidewalk, and they arrested us while we were filming. So that's what happened that night and how we got arrested. So we were out filming a bunch of people getting arrested, and the cops came after us and arrested us.
So what were your initial thoughts kind of playing through your mind as all of this was going on?
I wasn't really worried because I wasn't worried at the time because I was with some pretty big people, especially Richie McGinnis with the Daily Caller. So I kind of felt like if something were to happen to me, everyone would know about it. So I wasn't really worried about anything. I knew it wouldn't. If I had charges, I knew they wouldn't stick. And I wasn't really, like I said, I wasn't really worried. I felt like that Richie and Shelby from the Daily Caller would look out for us, and they did. And yeah, that's really what I thought at the time.
So I saw a video of Twitter of what seems to be the point where you and a couple of Daily Caller reporters actually got arrested, and it seemed to be pretty aggressive. How did you feel as all of this was going on?
So they weren't aggressive towards me. When I started yelling, I immediately went to the ground. But I didn't really realize what was happening. I saw Brandon get thrown to the ground. Other than that, I didn't notice what was going on. I was kind of looking at the ground, so I didn't see, of course. But I kind of felt calm. I had a feeling that you know, I'm, I was safe. Like I said, they were looking out for me. So if something were to happen, my message would get out there and all that stuff. So that's really what I thought during the whole situation.
So the arrest record says that you were arrested for violating an emergency order, but obviously as a member of the press, you have a right to be covering these events. Did the officers, upon releasing you, ever apologize or admit that they were wrong?
No, they did not. Not at all. They're actually on their Twitter. They tried to claim that only 2 members of the press were arrested rather than 4. And the reason they're claiming that is because we didn't show credentials at the time, which I've spoke to some attorneys, and they said credentials really don't mean anything in that situation. I mean, they're not issued by the sheriff. So basically, just because we didn't have identification of who we were with at the time, that was the reason why. Even like I said, Brendan has a bigger following than everyone who was there because he's got 75,000 on Twitter. So I mean, that was the reason why we were arrested. We didn't have credentials in quotes at us at the time, but that doesn't really mean much, It's yeah, but so yeah, on their Twitter, they didn't apologize. They were actually defending arresting us rather than apologizing to us. But I'm sure down the road that they'll issue an apology to us.
And it's interesting that you got arrested for violating an emergency order when we've been seeing in recent weeks all of these violent protests and riots happening in the streets. And it seems like nothing has been done to kind of stop it. How would you compare yourself to how you were treated when you were arrested to some of how the violent protesters have been treated during these events?
I think that we were treated pretty similarly to them. Well, I think they were really aggressive towards us, even though we identified ourselves as press, which is an issue in my end. But from what I've seen, some of those protesters were not treated that poorly. Some were not. But the thing is, I was in jail for 3 hours. Everyone was only in there for 3 hours. They basically just got a ticket and released them. So, I mean, they were out the next day. I mean, they have bail funds out ready to pay their fines. They have lawyers lined up ready to represent them and all this stuff. So I think that's why you keep seeing this stuff happen. is that there's a lot of nonprofits offering to pay their fines, offer them legal representation that basically get them out of any charges. And you have groups like the ACLU who are suing police departments for this type of stuff. Now, I do want to make it clear that some of the stuff Wauwatosa Police Department did, I think they deserve what's coming for them for it. I mean, I was actually in Milwaukee yesterday, and I got to see some footage some people recorded, and some of it looked like it was coming from Nigeria. I mean, there's some protests going on in Nigeria where the police are extremely aggressive. Some of it looked like that. And I think that's just more of a statement of Wauwatosa police rather than the U.S. Police Department as a whole. I've been to some places where the police are, they're being very respectful. They're maintaining order of the crowd, but they're not inflicting violence upon the crowd. So I saw this in Chicago. The police, they're out in force, but they made it where these people could protest in a lawful manner. I don't think Wauwatosa was doing that. I think they were more interested in trying to shut it down. So otherwise, I think that they were treating I was treated kind of like a protester, which I wasn't happy about, even though I wasn't. But from what I've seen is none of their charges really stick. I mean, they've been doing this for 3 months. So, I mean, yeah, they're not really doing a whole lot in that sense.
And as someone who has been on the ground covering these protests, do you think the mainstream media is doing a good job of portraying what is happening in the streets?
No, they are not. And it's not their fault. The reason why they're not, media, mainly local media. When I say mainstream media, I think of local media, that they're typically the people there. They often get chased out. And the reason why is because they have those huge cameras. They don't try to bring a phone in or a smaller camera. So they often get chased out by the protesters. So they don't do a good job of covering it. It's mostly not their fault because they get chased out. However, when I was in Louisville for the Breonna Taylor case, I heard some mainstream media talking about, I heard some girl with a camera crew say, don't film them, you're going to incriminate them. So there are some media out there who are more worried about incriminating people committing acts of crimes, acts of violence, than portraying the truth. But mostly the reason why they're not covering this is because they can't.
And what is something that you would like Americans to know about these protests and these riots that are happening as someone who has been in the middle of it?
As someone in the middle of it, there's two sides. BLM, they do their own PR. Some of the stuff they say is true. Some of the stuff they say is not true. But then there's also the side of the police. And the idea that these protests are peaceful, most of the time is not the case. I know, so when I was in Wauwatosa 2 days. The first day, it was not peaceful at all. The second day when I got arrested, it was kind of peaceful. I did not see anything. But the day before, they were smashing businesses. They were breaking windows on houses. They were threatening people, all that type of stuff. But I think there's two sides. Some police departments are committing acts of brutality, but that's not as common as we think it is, or as they portray it to be. So what the people need to know is that BLM, sometimes they're right about some situations, and sometimes the police are right about some situations. There's two sides to every story. That's really what I want to say. And I think what you see on social media is often one-sided. But a lot of these protests, in some way, they do have violence in them. They do have, property damage. And a lot of people don't see that.
And for those who may not know your story, I know that this isn't the first time that you've been suppressed as a journalist. Tell us a little bit about your experience as a student journalist on a college campus.
Absolutely. So from my experiences at the University of Illinois, I believe they do not take kindly to reporters who report the university in a negative light. So I was covering a protest back in 2017. It was an anti-Trump protest. I was there with a couple friends. And one of the speakers, who happened to be a graduate instructor employed by the university, attacked me and another student physically. He was actually given a criminal citation. He had to go to court over that. But what happened afterwards led to a 2-year litigation against the university. So they issued no contact orders against us. They essentially wanted us to stay away from him. And eventually it got to the point where if I was at a protest, I was told I was violating the orders simply because I was at a protest and he was there. I was nowhere near him, that type of stuff. So mainly my experiences with the university is that they were trying to prevent me from reporting on some of these protests where rhetoric might be said that doesn't make them look favorable, or sometimes acts of violence occur at these types of stuff.
And do you think these experiences might have helped you in this particular situation?
Absolutely. I mean, these experiences help me remain calm, especially when things are tense. I know for sure it's kind of scary when a lot of BLM protesters, I'm not pro BLM, obviously. I'm with Campus Reform, of course, but it's kind of scary, when a lot of these people have firearms, they're committing crimes, and you're trying to record them doing this. So, I mean, it's really taught me to remain calm because I've been in a lot of these stressful situations before with a hostile crowd around me, and I'm trying to navigate my way through it and film what's happening. So, yeah, it really did prepare me well for this type of stuff.
And before we end, do you have any other final thoughts or details that you would like to share with our audience today?
Not really. Follow me on Twitter at Real Blair Nelson. I go to this stuff a lot. I'm starting to go to whatever I can. Right now, I'm just reporting on the Midwest. But election's coming up soon, and I will be on the ground. I'm going to start wearing a hidden camera during this stuff. I have a lot of great things planned. So hopefully, I should be getting a lot of great stuff.
Well, thank you again for joining us today for this interview. Again, that was Blair Nelson, one of our campus correspondents. Hope you have a nice day, and we'll see you later.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey there, my name is Hannah Catherine Smith, and I'm with Campus Reform. To continue seeing videos like these, be sure to subscribe here. And if you're interested in becoming a member of the Campus Reform team as an investigator or a correspondent, you can join the team here. And if you'd like to help us continue making videos like these, donate here.